Men are often seen as strong, steady, and unshakable. But the truth is, even the toughest man can completely melt mentally when a woman does something so simple yet so powerful that it disarms his guard and makes him see her differently. This isn't about manipulation. This is about connection, understanding, and stepping into a deeper influence that changes the way he thinks, feels, and responds to you. Men are not moved by pressure, they are moved by presence. And this truth is something that often gets overlooked in relationships because pressure looks loud, it looks forceful, it looks convincing in the moment. But what it actually does is push someone away. Pressure puts people in defense mode, it makes them guard their mind and their emotions. And instead of opening up, they start shutting down. Men, especially, are wired to resist pressure because it feels like a challenge. It feels like someone is trying to control them or box them in. And the natural response to that is to push back harder or to withdraw completely. But presence is different. Presence is quiet but powerful. It's the way you hold yourself in the moment without needing to force or prove anything. It's the steady eye contact, the calm tone of voice, the patience to let silence do some of the talking instead of rushing to fill every space with demands and explanations. Men melt mentally when they feel a woman's presence instead of her pressure, because presence creates safety. It creates space for him to process and to respond without fear that he's going to be attacked or judged. And when he feels that space, he lowers his guard, he lets down the wall. That pressure only makes stronger. Think about how people respond to different energies. When someone comes at you with intensity and force, your body naturally stiffens up. You want to fight back or run away. But when someone comes with calm, steady energy, you feel yourself relax even if you didn't plan on it. That's the same effect presence has on men. It disarms them. It makes them pay attention in a way that no amount of shouting or nagging ever could. And this isn't about silence or passivity. It's not about letting things slide or never standing up for yourself. It's about how you choose to communicate. Strength presence is strength wrapped in calm. It's unshakable confidence that doesn't need to scream to be heard. And when a man sees that, he can't help but take notice because he's not dealing with pressure. He's dealing with influence. Men are not moved by being told what to do. They are moved by being inspired to do it themselves. And presence inspires action because it shows you are in control of yourself. And nothing makes a man respect a woman more than realizing she is not trying to control him. She is simply holding her ground and inviting him to meet her. Their presence communicates self-respect. And when you respect yourself, it demands respect in return without you ever having to push for it. Pressure says, I don't trust you to get it right, so I need to force you. Presence says, I trust myself enough to know my worth, and I don't need to force anything, because what's right for me will align with me. And men melt when they feel that certainty because it's rare. It's not what they encounter in the world every day. When you are present, instead of pressuring, you shift the whole dynamic of the relationship. You become the calm in the storm, and men are drawn to that energy. They start to lean in instead of pulling away. They start listening instead of defending. They start wanting to give more instead of resisting. Because presence doesn't just touch the mind, it speaks to the heart. It sends a message that says, I don't need to overpower you to be heard. I simply need to be here fully. And when you are fully present in the way you speak, in the way you listen, in the way you carry yourself, you create an atmosphere that melts the mental walls. Men build up pressure only makes those walls taller, but presence makes them fall without force, without resistance, without a fight. And that's the kind of impact that lasts because it's not about making someone move. It's about inspiring them to want to move on their own. And that is why men are not moved by pressure. They are moved by presence. Respectful communication melts resistance faster than arguments. And this is one of the most misunderstood truths about how people connect, because so often we think if we argue harder, if we raise our voice, if we repeat our point over and over, eventually the other person will give in. But what actually happens is the opposite arguments trigger defensiveness. They create walls. They put the other person in a position where they feel like they need to protect themselves instead of listening to what's being said. And when someone feels attacked, their focus is no longer on understanding. They shift into survival mode. They want to win, they want to defend, they want to prove you wrong. And the actual issue gets buried under the noise. Respectful communication changes that dynamic completely because it doesn't activate the defense, it disarms it. When you choose respect in your tone, in your words, in your body language, you're sending a signal that you're not here to fight, you're here to be heard, and that signal changes everything. Think about the last time someone spoke to you with patience, with calm, with understanding. Even if you didn't agree with everything they said, you probably found yourself more open to considering their perspective and maybe even respecting them more for how they handled the conversation. That's the effect respectful communication has. It bypasses the resistance that arguments create because it makes the other person feel valued. And when a man feels valued, he listens differently, he processes differently, he doesn't feel the need to armor up and protect his ego. He feels free to be more honest, and that's when true connection can happen. Respectful communication isn't about agreeing with everything. It's not about avoiding tough conversations. It's about how you deliver your truth, because truth spoken with disrespect is rarely received. But truth spoken with respect has the power to shift someone's thinking and even soften their heart. When you tell a man how you feel without blaming, without attacking, without throwing his mistakes in his face, you give him the opportunity to meet you where you are instead of forcing him to defend where he's been. And men melt mentally in those moments because they don't expect it. They are used to confrontation. They are used to people trying to win against them, but they are not used to someone standing strong in their feelings while still honoring their dignity. And that unexpected approach is what changes the way he sees you. Arguments may feel powerful in the moment because they are loud and fiery, but they rarely create lasting change. They often leave both people hurt, resentful, and more disconnected. But respectful communication builds bridges. It lays down pathways for trust. It tells a man you can disagree with him without disrespecting him. And that subtle difference makes all the difference, because when he doesn't feel attacked, he doesn't need to fight back. And when he doesn't need to fight back, he can actually hear you men crave respect even more than agreement. And when you give it even in conflict, you gain influence not by force, but by choice. Respectful communication also requires self-control. It means choosing your words carefully. It means slowing down before reacting. It means understanding that the goal isn't to win, it's to be understood. And that kind of discipline is magnetic because it shows strength of character. A man may push against arguments all day, but when he's faced with respect, he has no defense against it. It softens him, it pulls him in, it makes him want to rise to that same level and match the respect being shown. And that's where real growth in a relationship happens. Not when you've shouted the loudest, but when you've spoken the clearest with honor and restraint, because in the end, arguments harden hearts, but respectful communication melts resistance faster every single time. Softness carries more strength than aggression in relationships. And this is something many people underestimate because society often equates strength with volume, with dominance, with the ability to overpower. But true strength in human connection doesn't come from overpowering. It comes from influence. And influence is born in the way you make someone feel when you meet aggression. With aggression, all you do is escalate the conflict, you fuel the fire, and both people end up burned. But when you meet aggression with softness, you create a different rhythm, one that confuses the expectation and shifts the entire energy of the interaction. Softness is powerful because it communicates that you are not controlled by the chaos around you. You are anchored in your own calm, and that calm is contagious. Men, in particular, are conditioned to respond to pressure with resistance, but when faced with softness, they don't know how to fight it because it doesn't give them anything to push back against. Softness doesn't mean silence, it doesn't mean weakness, and it doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. It means choosing a controlled strength that shows you can stand your ground without losing your composure, and that kind of presence is unforgettable. A soft tone in the middle of a heated moment, a gentle but steady look in the eye when everything else feels tense. Those subtle acts carry more influence than shouting ever could because they speak to the deeper part of a man that longs for peace, not chaos. Aggression can win temporary battles, but softness wins long-term influence because it speaks in a language the mind may try to resist, but the heart cannot ignore. Think about it: when someone approaches you with aggression, your guard goes up instantly. But when someone approaches you with softness, especially when you expect the opposite, it catches you off guard. It lowers your defenses without you even realizing it. And that is the true power of softness. It bypasses the wall that aggression only makes higher men melt mentally when they encounter this, because it feels different. It feels safe. And safety is what opens the door to real vulnerability. Softness also reflects emotional intelligence. It shows that you are not ruled by your first impulse. It shows that you know when to let silence carry the weight, when to let your presence do the talking, when to hold back words that don't build but destroy. And this level of control makes a man listen even more closely because he realizes he is dealing with someone who doesn't waste energy on proving a point, but instead channels it into making an impact. The strength of softness lies in its steadiness. It's not reactionary, it's intentional, and intention always wins over impulse. The truth is, men don't remember every argument, but they remember the moments when someone treated them with unexpected kindness in the middle of tension. They remember the woman who didn't match their fire with fire, but instead responded with a calm that forced them to reflect on their own behavior. That memory lingers longer than any sharp words ever could, because softness creates contrast. It makes him see himself differently, and it makes him see you differently too. And that shift is where respect grows, where admiration deepens, and where influence is secured. Softness is not about giving in. It's about holding power differently. It's about recognizing that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not raise your voice, not slam the door, not retaliate, but remain calm and consistent when everything else feels unstable. And that stability is what men melt for because it's rare, it's grounding, and it speaks louder than any aggressive reaction ever could. A woman's calm confidence rewires how a man processes her because confidence is magnetic on its own. But when it is combined with calmness, it becomes a force that shifts the entire way he thinks and responds. Confidence alone can sometimes look like arrogance, and calm alone can sometimes look like passivity. But when those two qualities merge, they create an energy that is unshakable. A man doesn't just see it, he feels it in the way you speak, in the way you move, in the way you set boundaries without needing to raise your voice. Calm confidence communicates that you know who you are, you know what you bring, and you don't need anyone else's validation to stand firmly in that truth. Men are wired to test boundaries, not always intentionally, but because they subconsciously want to know what's real and what's solid. And when they encounter a woman who reacts with desperation or fear, it confirms to them that her foundation isn't steady. But when they meet a woman who responds with calm confidence, it changes the way their mind works around her. Suddenly, she isn't someone they can easily rattle or manipulate. She becomes someone they respect because her energy demands it without her having to ask. Calm confidence is powerful because it's consistent. It doesn't rise and fall with moods. It doesn't depend on how he acts that day or how the relationship feels in the moment. It's rooted in self-awareness and self-value, and that level of steadiness makes a man process you differently than others he has encountered. When you are calm and confident, you don't beg for attention, you don't chase validation, you don't argue to prove your worth because your worth is already secure, and men mentally melt in the presence of that kind of certainty. It leaves them with nothing to fight against, no insecurity to feed on, no weakness to exploit. Instead, it forces them to confront themselves. It makes them consider whether they are rising to your level or falling short, and that internal reflection is what creates deep respect. When a man sees calm confidence in a woman, he begins to adjust his own behavior around her. He becomes more mindful with his words, more intentional with his actions, because he knows this is not someone who will tolerate chaos or inconsistency. And it's not because she threatened him, it's because her energy makes it clear that she lives by a standard, and anyone in her life must either meet it or move aside. And that rewiring effect is subtle but powerful. It doesn't come from force, it comes from presence. It comes from her ability to remain steady even when things get difficult, because calm confidence in conflict is where its true strength shows. Most people can be confident when life is easy, but when challenges hit, when emotions run high, when the temptation to react is strongest, that's when calm confidence shines. It's the ability to speak firmly without shouting to say no, without apologizing to walk away without fear. Men notice this, and it impacts them deeply because it is not the norm. Many women either shrink back and avoid standing up for themselves, or they come at him with aggression. But calm confidence is the middle ground. It's the balance that commands respect without demanding it. And men cannot ignore it. Their minds start processing you as someone different, someone elevated, someone whose approval and presence is valuable and not to be taken for granted. Calm confidence makes you unforgettable because it communicates both strength and peace, and that combination is what truly makes men melt mentally. Men mentally surrender when they feel truly seen and valued, because at the core of every man, no matter how strong or confident he appears, there is a deep need to be understood and appreciated. Many men walk through life carrying silent battles, unspoken insecurities, and pressures they rarely voice out loud. They are expected to be strong providers, protectors, leaders. Yet beneath that armor is often someone longing for connection that doesn't judge or constantly measure them against expectations. When a man encounters a woman who sees past the surface and acknowledges the person he is behind the role he plays, it disarms him completely. It melts the mental walls he has built and creates a space where he feels safe enough to be real. Being truly seen is not about flattery. It's not about empty compliments or feeding his ego. It's about noticing the details others overlook. It's paying attention to his effort, even in small things. It's recognizing his character, not just his achievements, and it's listening in a way that makes him feel his words matter. Men often feel invisible in relationships, not because they aren't present, but because their deeper layers go unnoticed. They may hear criticism more than appreciation. They may feel judged more than understood. And when that becomes the pattern, they withdraw emotionally. But when you are the woman who flips that dynamic, when you see what others miss and value what others dismiss, it rewires how he thinks about you, because suddenly he feels he doesn't have to fight to be noticed. He doesn't have to prove his worth to be accepted. He can simply be. Valuing a man doesn't mean losing yourself or lowering your standards. It means respecting what he brings while still holding your own identity and strength. When a man feels valued by someone who clearly values herself, it strikes a balance that is rare and powerful. It tells him you are not affirming him out of neediness. You are affirming him from a place of security. And men melt in that kind of environment because it feels genuine and unforced. Many women try to control or criticize in hopes of shaping a man into who they want, but that often backfires. It hardens him. It makes him resist. But showing value inspires growth without pressure. It makes him want to rise, not because he's forced, but because he feels honored. Truly seeing a man also means seeing his flaws without weaponizing them against him. It's about holding him accountable with respect, not shame. Men already know where they fall short. They don't need reminders of their inadequacies. But when a woman can see the weakness without attacking it and still believe in his strength, that is when he feels the deepest sense of surrender, because he realizes he doesn't have to hide to be loved. He doesn't have to wear the mask to be respected. And that freedom is priceless. When a man feels truly seen and valued, his entire way of interacting with you changes. He becomes more open, more vulnerable, more willing to let you into the parts of his world he normally keeps closed off. He respects your opinion more. He prioritizes your presence more, and he protects that bond fiercely because it is not something he finds everywhere. Men may have many interactions, but very few leave a lasting impression. The ones that do are the ones that made them feel valued beyond the surface. Men remember the woman who saw them when others overlooked them. They remember the woman who spoke life into them instead of tearing them down. And that memory never leaves their mind. It reshapes how they view you, how they treat you, and how deeply they let you in, because men mentally surrender when they finally feel seen, not just for what they do, but for who they are, and valued not just in moments of success, but in the quiet, ordinary moments where their effort often goes unnoticed.